get you something to eat, princess. You're getting really rowdy. Alright. What do you want to eat? Don't look at the camera, look at me. What do you want to eat? Brains? We all know you're gonna go starving because there's not much going on up here. So, you know, stop looking at the camera. Come on, focus. Let's find something to eat. You want some bologna? You want some, stop looking at the camera. Stop biting me. What is wrong with you? No, not the camera. Hey y'all, what's up? It's Kellen with K&T Do Halloween. Hope everybody is having a great week. Let's get right into this makeover. So this week we're doing Fright in the box, and first thing I'm doing is I am flattening out those embossed skulls. I really wish they hadn't embossed the skulls into the plastic, and I think this print was really kind of random for the design. I'm using my heat gun to soften the plastic and then pressing it flat between two pieces of wood to remove the raised skulls. Now moving on to my base paint, I'm using flat black spray paint to create a base coat. I did 2 coats, and this will help me later as I won't have to worry about covering up all the design work that was printed on these panels. Now I'm going through and spray painting the center section of each panel. I'm using cardboard to block off the edges because I don't want overspray on those areas because it will mess with the illusion and I'll have to spray paint over it later with more red spray paint. So I'm using pieces of cardboard to go around and spray paint the inner section. What I really wanted to show off with this project is that you don't have to have a ton of artistic ability. You can use things like painter's tape, cardboard, and spray paint and use the advantage of creating a hard edge and shadows to help you with your paint jobs. Now that I finished the white on the center, I'm going to go around on each panel and spray paint each of the edges red. I'm using again a piece of cardboard and I'm spray painting with a hard edge towards the inside white section. I'm using just red spray paint. I think the color is apple and it's a semi-gloss spray paint. This technique of masking with the cardboard allows for speed and also having clean sections without overspray from the white to the red. Once you've gone around each section, we're going to move on and spray paint the handle. I'm just spray painting the handle silver because I didn't think that the black handle popped at all. We'll work on the handle a bit more later. And now moving on to all of my stenciling. I know I wanted to create an old-time Jack-in-the-Box feel, so I wanted to use a bold pattern like a star. I'm going around each panel and using a stencil. You can cut this out of cardboard. I happen to have one for one of our Christmas light forms, but once I've traced it out, I'm going back and then I'm using painter's tape to tape out all of the outside edges. Painter's tape can be an amazing tool. Now for the top section, I know I wanted a circle pattern, so you saw me mark that with the 5-gallon bucket before I taped out the star. Now I'm going through and I'm doing my first coat of Wildfire UV yellow paint on each star. The taping allows you to move much quicker for the stenciling so you're not freehand painting. Now I'm going through each panel and painting my second layer. Typically UV paints need a couple coats because they tend to run thin. I'm removing all of the tape and you can see the clean sharp lines I have on my pattern. Now I'm moving on to finishing the handle. I'm first drilling a hole down the center. I'm using a 4-inch styrofoam ball from Michaels and I'm just drilling out the center large enough to be able to shove the handle through. I'm gluing it on the original handle so it still is free to rotate. Now after a snappy film cleanup, I'm going to go through and paint 3 coats of exterior latex paint all over the styrofoam ball. I didn't want to foam coat this just because I knew it would add weight, and I knew the exterior latex paint, when painted on several coats, would protect the styrofoam enough without adding weight. Now I'm going to take this guy out for a quick bath in some red spray paint. I'm now going to go through and squeeze in some liquid nails to the inside of both parts of the hole before shoving the handle through. I'm now going through and using the liquid nails to fill in the gap on the inside since the handle is slightly smaller on one end. My yellow UV paint is dry, so I'm using a large round dish to mark my outer circle pattern for the top panel. Back to more taping. I'm using painter's tape to go over all of the yellow UV areas of the paint. I'm also masking off the top and bottom as well as the sides. I'm going through and painting freehand the circle which I've marked on the top panel. I'm going to do 2 coats of the Wildfire UV, and it just helps to have the star taped over since I'm going to use the tape to help create a shadow pattern. I went through and taped off all the other panels, and now I'm going through with black in my airbrush, and I'm using that tape to help me create some depth and shadow around these shapes, especially around the star. This would be really difficult to do with stencils or freehand, so the tape just makes it a much faster process since I'm going through and doing this to 5 panels. You can now see I'm going through and removing the tape, and just by using painter's tape you're able to create more depth and really replicate that star shadow pattern on every single panel without a ton of effort, but it is time consuming to tape all of the panels. Also notice when I'm painting the top and bottom and I move to the sides, I'm removing the side strips of the tape and also painting some black shadows over the top and bottom panels. I love the drop shadow effect, it's one of my favorites. Now time to move on to painting the face. First things first, I'm going through with some white latex mask paint, and I'm removing all of the detail paint around the eyes and the mouth. For this paint job, I wanted to use some of the original base features and then elaborate on top of it. I'm first going through with some black paint and a small paintbrush just to paint in between the teeth, and now I'm going over the nose with some more red latex mask paint just to deepen the color. I'm now hand painting the triangle bits on the tops and bottoms of the eyes, and I decided to go through and add an orange brow. Shout out to Jeff at the Basement Effects for that idea. I'm also going around the mouth with some orange paint. I did this 3 times before going back through with my Sharpie, and I'm outlining the mouth just to give it some pop and some punch and also clean up the edge. I'm now going through and painting ivory over the tops of all the teeth. When I'm going for gross teeth, I always like the ivory base to start with. Now I'm mixing up some red, pink, and black paint just to paint the tongue, and I'm also cleaning off the eyeballs with some alcohol. Now, when the ivory paint's still wet, I'm using some yellow paint to go through and add kind of the tartar and the grime. I like to do it while the paint's still wet so you can blend the 2 colors together and it just looks better to me. And now I'm going through with a brown glaze. I'm just painting over the top of each tooth and then wiping it off with a paper towel, and that really gives me that grimy effect over the top of the teeth. You could also use a wax or something like that if you wanted to. Finally, I'm going through with some black in my airbrush and I'm shadowing around each tooth, just around the insides of the eyes, the hairline, under the cheekbones, as well as under that orange brow. Now, I wasn't super happy with how that shadow turned out, but I kind of had to work with it, so I decided that I was going to paint the orange brow thicker, and that definitely helped, as well as I went back around with a Sharpie and outlined that brow, which helped kind of minimize how dark and spotty that original shadow had become. But by going back and adding the UV paint that was thicker and outlining it, I think it definitely visually looks better for me. Now I want to go through and mess with his hair a little bit. I'm just taking small sections of the hair and teasing from root to the end to make it go closer to his head. I'm then holding it in place with a ton of Got To Be Glued freeze hairspray. You could also use clear spray paint if you wanted to. I find Got To Be Glued is fairly waterproof, yet you can go ahead and remove it later if need be. Now I'm going to go on and use one of my favorite products, Fright Prop Wet, and I'm going to add a layer over the top of the eyes and over the entire mouth, coating the tongue, on the top of the mouth, and every single tooth. I really like the shiny wet look that this gives to the mouths, especially on the Spirit Animatronics. Using the permablood and using the wet is a great way to just add a little bit of enhancement to your props. And now moving on to the only piece of costuming for this prop, I've taken apart the bow tie and snap. I've sprayed it with some flat black spray paint, let it dry, and now I'm using a bottle cap to create some polka dots. Just a random pattern. I know that it's going to be folded up, and I'm kind of placing some on the folds and some off. I just want this to be a breakup pattern, and this is UV paint as well, so I'm using the black background to really make these pop. I brushed around the loop on the elastic, and once it's dry, I'm going to fold it back up and thread it back through the loop. This definitely took me a second. Now I'm going through and I'm using the edge edge and just a light brush stroke to detail all of the folds in the bow tie. It doesn't look like much, but under the black light, those highlights will really pop. I'm also painting some silver on the glue parts of the handle and letting that dry. Moving on to the lid, I'm using a Sharpie and outlining the orange UV circle just so it pops later on and help clean up the edge. I stuck a Home Depot bucket inside with a spray paint can tucked in a plastic bag just so I could hold that elastic open while I was adding the blood around the center part. I've now propped the lid open and I'm just using a paintbrush and a straw and having a little bit of fun flinging blood all over a prop. I've now added the head back inside so that can dry. I've also added the handle. Now I'm going through and I'm adding some metal scrapes around the edges of the red, and also I'm adding some of my favorite rust color on top of that metallic paint where it looks like scratches, just to dull those areas down so they're not so bright. To add some texture to break up the white, I'm using watered down black paint and flinging it on with a paintbrush. I'm now prepping some permablood. I'm painting it on a gloved hand and pressing it onto the front. I really wanted this to look creepy with bloody handprints all over it and kind of take a eerie element. Definitely had an image in my head of a child's Jack-in-the-Box that's just gone horribly wrong. And to be honest, I really loved the original story where the toy maker got turned into the toy. So I really wanted to play with that idea. I'm now going through and I'm just adding some blood around the edges, some drips on the front, and now I'm going to pop the front panel off because I wanted to add a light to this prop. I'm using a color piano light. I'll link below a video that's more detailed on these fixtures. I'm just attaching it with some Velcro. I sequenced the light off camera and it will trigger with the same prop trigger that the Spirit Halloween prop uses. Now I'm cutting a slit in the fabric so the light works, and at this point all hell has broken loose and I have decided to destroy the whole prop. Just kidding. I'm cutting out the center panel on the top section and creating a hinge because I absolutely hated the way the top of this prop opened. It just didn't look like a Jack-in-the-Box, so I cut off the top plastic and the top corrugated cardboard, created a hinge out of tape, and then secured everything back together so the center section became the lid. I'm now adding Velcro to the front lip. That way you can still open the prop to access it, but it will hold it down while the prop is being activated and the center lid is opening. I'm now using the original pieces of string that held the lid down and moving them to the inside. I poked 2 holes on the corrugated cardboard and attached them with the little metal clips. This will keep the new internal lid from flipping out and back when the prop pops up. I made sure that I didn't poke through the front plastic, that way I didn't have to hide the clips. This was definitely a challenging prop, but I love now that the center lid makes it feel much more like a Jack-in-the-Box. Because I use a heat gun to flatten the center panel, there was a little bit of a warp to it, which is fine. It's supposed to look like an old toy box, but I added a small piece of black fabric just to help block the light that would be coming through and helps disguise the fact that the center lid is going to open. I'm now using black in my airbrush and going over the area where I created the taped joint, all the edges of the drop shadow that I painted earlier, as well as the inside of the lid where the white plastic can still be seen. Also, it helps camouflage that little piece of black fabric that we added. Now I'm going to move on to doing a little bit of spray painting. I don't want to do too much because I still want this to have some bold colors, so I'm going through first around the edges, corners, and bottom with a dark brown spray paint. I'm then going through with a khaki color just to add a little bit of dust on top of some of the edges and the high points. And then finally I'm going to go back through with some black spray paint. Very little, I just want to add some shadowing and help blend everything together. And finally, my most favorite part, any excuse I get to add blood to something, I definitely needed to mess up this guy's face. So I'm using a straw, one of my favorite application techniques and tools for blood, to fling, blow, and splatter it everywhere. I don't know why I enjoy this part so much. And at this point my husband came in and said he needs more. So I just decided to create a big huge head wound on the top of his head. You know, I figured he slammed it into the lid of the box a few times. Man, this was fun, but it was definitely a challenge. This prop isn't very well made to begin with, so making it over and adapting it to something new was a bit of a challenge, but definitely a fun one. What I wanted to do with this prop was really go along with the original storyline and not add too many different costuming pieces and run with the original story of the prop. And to me, that's exactly what this is. It's a creepy, scary Jack-in-the-Box where the toy maker got attacked and was turned into one of his creepy creations. And I think it's awesome. Now's a great time to smack that like button in the face. It lets us know you enjoyed this video and definitely helps our channel out as we are growing. Be sure to hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell so you don't miss any more makeovers and future prop builds. Thank y'all so much for watching. Remember, if you create it, they will come. Now let's check out the new Fright in the Box. we have grains. You know, stop looking at the camera. What is wrong with you? Ah, stop biting me.